You never think your life is gonna become somehow history. When you're young, especially, you kind of think things are gonna remain as they are forever, and yet they don't. Today, instead of talking history, I just wanted to share some thoughts about how Rome has changed since I was young. I was born in the second half of the 80s, so my Rome was the Rome of the late 90s and the early 2000s. Not a lot of time has passed, but Rome feels very different today. When I was young, fresh out of high school, we used to say that Florence was a theme park. You go to Florence, you watch the monuments, there's no real life there. It's built for tourism. But Rome has kind of turned into that lately, and I don't really love it. To be young in Rome at the time was a unique experience. I remember going out with my friends. We used to go to a wine shop and grab a wine, grab something to eat, usually wine infused donuts, dry donuts. They're great. If you go to Rome, try them. And we used to find a place to drink and chat and play some games. Now, today you could go to the pub, you could go to someone's house. At the time, our choice was to go to St. Peter's. We used to walk up to St. Peter's, walk between the colonnade, and, well, just sit there. It was natural seating. It was natural coverage from wind and even rain, if you were unlucky. And so we just stayed there and chat and look at the statues of the saints, look at all of the artwork on the face of St. Peter's, spend a lot of time in between a monument that is the center of Christianity, the center of Rome itself, in a certain sense. It's a place that you usually think of visiting once, enjoying the incredible view, the majestic architecture, and then just remember. But to us, it was our evening, especially during a weeknight, because on the weekend you would go somewhere you could socialize a little bit more, right? But on a weeknight, on a slow night, on a night where you just wanted to talk about bullshit, talk about the game, something even a little nerdy, it was the perfect spot. At the time, there was a cop car that used to patrol the square itself. It used to park there and make the rounds. There was no fence as there is now. There was no separation between the square of St. Peter itself and the square in front of St. Peter. The arms of the church were open to visitors during the night. They used to approach us, ask us what we were doing, just to see if we were doing something actually bad. And when we showed them the wine, they used to ask some questions about it, like, where did you get it? Or is it good? If we had beer, they asked for the brand. And if we had a weird one, like a local beer, something like that, they used to question us because maybe after shift they were going to try it out. It was a very familiar situation. Even if they never saw us, it wasn't like we knew the cops there. But they knew we were doing nothing wrong. We were just some local kids having a chill evening. This kind of interaction happened in many of the monumental sites in Rome in my life, like the Palazzaccio, the huge palace in Piazza Cavour, home to the Italian Supreme Court. There are these beautiful fountains on both sides of the Palazzaccio, and they have a sloping roof. So we used to climb up there. I mean, it wasn't really perfectly legal, I think. Yeah, probably wasn't, but we weren't doing anything particularly wrong. It's a pretty recent building, too. Anyway, we used to climb up there and just lay there with something to drink on the sloped surface and look at the sky, look at the building, chat. There was a level of accessibility to monuments in the center of Rome. We used to live between them, with them. Now, I work in the field of history. I am extremely invested in conservation. So I understand why we cannot climb monuments, of course. It would be crazy. But the fact that we, as Romans, have been expelled from St. Peter's Square, that we cannot just sit between the columns relaxed. Even during the day, the fact that the square has been invaded. There are security checks. There is police around, not the old police that understood the situation and was very relaxed, a new kind. There are, of course, tourists, and we live on tourists. So you will not hear me as a Roman to speak ill of over tourism in Rome. Please come. Our shops need you. But it does feel different. It feels like it's built to be visited in a very quick way, structured way. Now, this is not everywhere in Rome. It is mostly in the center and in the areas where tourism has bloomed with time. If you go on the outskirts of Rome, you will find the old way to live with the monuments. There is a park. It's named after the aqueducts. It's the Park of the Aqueducts because a lot of old aqueducts go to the southeast of Rome, to the sources of water. In this park, completely outside of the tourist routes, you can find 3 different aqueducts running practically parallel. And of course, they are broken down, they're ruins. In between these ruins, you can always find groups of young people, like time has been standing still there for quite a while. They do there what we used to do in the past in the center of Rome. And one thing I noticed personally is that they treat the ruins with a lot of respect. Even if they sit around in them or on them, you do not find lots of graffiti there. You do not find damage. The place is very well kept. People just live their lives around them. I have, I think, just one more example of Rome nostalgia for you. And I do hope I provided you with at least something to go see the next time you're in Rome with this. It's about Monte Tuscolo, Tuscolo Hill. So on this hill used to be the city of Tusculum, the rival of early Rome during the monarchy era. It was an important spot, and even after Tusculum was destroyed, it remained one for centuries. There were a lot of noble Romans who built their domus on top of Tuscolo. So the hill is completely covered in ruins. My grandma used to tell me stories about people literally falling down. They were walking around the hill, just minding their own business, and they would fall into the ground because it was an empty ruin under them, so it wouldn't hold their weight up. Now, true or false, I used to remember that with my grandma, I used to go around the hill and look for the ruins. She would point at the Cicero summer house, and we would explore it very respectfully. It's incredible how much time these places have survived completely in the hands of modern people with no state oversight. There was no police, there was nothing. You could literally steal everything. And yet, the house, the building, was still there. Now, I'm not saying people didn't steal. We all know they did, especially in older times. But you know, if you live around Rome, it is a very complicated relationship. You can buy a house and discover there's a domus right under you with artifacts of incredible value. And while it's awesome and incredibly cool, it's also devastating because if it's discovered, the archaeological authorities are going to come and kind of condemn your house. Like, they're not gonna tell you to go away, but you cannot do anything there. You cannot build. You can, if you need to repair your house, you need to do it through very complicated laws. So people are both in love and afraid of Roman ruins. But anyway, On top of the hill of Tuscolo was a small town, but it was incredibly monumental, beautiful. It was built for the elite of Rome to spend their summer with a beautiful wind. Today, there's a beautiful wind there. People go and they do paragliding from there. And of course, this city left ruins. So when I was a kid, I used to go there with my grandmother, and there was this theater that is still there today. And so we just used to play around there, to sit on the steps. It was literally like walking in history. That's probably a reason why I decided to study history, right? The theater was like a sanctuary at the time. It would fill up with people on Pasquetta, the day after Easter. Everyone would bring barbecue and eat around it, but it wasn't being heavily damaged. Of course, let me point this out. I have the point of view of a kid, so I'm actually not against protecting all of this. It's just that something gets lost on the way, and I think it's worth remembering. So then came the Spanish, I think. Yes, a Spanish university came. It is incredible to me that a Spanish university had to do the excavations around Tuscolo, while, of course, we have so many that would love to do this work in Italy. But founding in Italy is, well, not even worth talk about. And today, if you go to Tuscolo, the place is completely fenced out. It is locked in. You have to, of course, buy a ticket and go in a very structured and guided tour. Now, this has a lot of positives. The people working there are amazing. They give you a beautiful tour, they tell you about the story of the place. They have done a beautiful job. There's really nothing that can be said about it. But you don't leave the place anymore. You have no access. You cannot just take it in for a while. So, to conclude this little rant, because this is just a rant, I think there's a Rome that will never exist again. A Rome that, of course, I personally lived when I was a kid, but a Rome that people older than me lived in for a long time. A Rome where the ancient was far closer to people than it is right now. A Rome that didn't resemble an amusement park that much, with rides for which you get in line for. A Rome that wasn't locked down away at night, that you could experience. A Rome where the gardens around Castel Sant'Angelo were just opened wide for us to live in at any time of the day. It had negatives. Those parks, for a while, were infested with people shooting up. That's the sad reality. It wasn't dangerous, at least in my experience. No one really approached me, or I never saw anyone being negatively approached around there. But you did find traces of it. Growing up in Rome has a certain kind of mystique. St. Peter, all of these monuments, when you decide that, well, I'm 18, I'm just gonna sign myself out of school. And I mean, we've all done it. You do not just go to some random place. You sit down in front of a piece of history, have a coffee, and read the newspaper. When you prowl the streets with your friends at night, in my case, being idiots and probably talking about Dungeons and Dragons a little too much, you do it in between ancient walls that defended the city again and again, between churches with a rich history, between ruins of things you have never heard of. You walk through the square built on top of the place where Julius Caesar was killed, and you don't even know it for a very long time until you discover it and you go, huh? And it doesn't really surprise you that much because it's Rome. It's everywhere. You build a parking spot. They actually did. They built a parking lot, an underground parking lot in Piazza Cavour, And during the works, they found domus after domus after domus, ancient Roman houses, the perimeter perfectly visible. Me and my friends used to keep tabs on it for fun. We used to just peek over and see the new ruin unveiled. Some of them disappeared. I think the archaeological authority just documented it and moved it away, the artifacts, the stones. But I don't know. I've never really known. I just saw this ancient ruin being unveiled day after day after day and then disappear, just as if they never existed to begin with. Who knows what happened? Anyway, this concludes my little rant about a Rome that will never be again. I'll see you soon for some more history content. Have a good one.